are the authors of this book, Shattered Dreams Brought Hope, Dr. Laquita Higgs and Dr. Elton Higgs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to have you both doctors and husband and wife.
Yes.
Yes. And you spent your career at University of Michigan.
At the Dearborn campus, yes.
Right. So, did you meet at U of M?
Oh, no. Long before that.
We're from Texas, and so we met at the college. We were at the Christian college.
And what did you teach?
I taught history at U of M Dearborn as well, but I was only part-time. But Elton.
Elton, what did you teach?
I taught English literature, emphasis on the medieval period.
Yes, nothing about medicine or science, which is what really your book is in part about.
Mm-hmm.
We had to become educated.
Yeah. And today I think we'll get a little educated as well, because you raised two daughters, two adopted daughters,
Right.
with Huntington's disease. Tell us a little bit about what Huntington's disease is.
Go ahead. Well, it's genetic, neurological, in that it affects the brain. Brain cells die. If you have that mutated gene, it affects the mind, the body, and the emotions. So there are behavior problems often. Eventually they die after a few years, totally helpless. It just takes away all their abilities gradually over time.
The
Sounds
familial
like
implications.
it's a horrible disease.
It is.
No
yes.
treatment, no cure.
Right.
Right.
The familial implications of it are terrible too, because it's genetic.
And because of that, when you were approached to adopt your first daughter, you knew that she was predisposed to.
Yes.
She was at risk.
She was at
It was
risk.
a 25% risk at the time.
At the time.
It later gained because we found out definitely that her biological mother had it.
Yeah. Yes.
So because of that, she had a 1 in 4 chance of developing it, right?
Well, it ended up 50-50 chance.
50-50 chance. All right. Well, you brought
Right.
some photos. Let's take a look, and you can tell us
Yeah.
who.
That's-
well, that's you and you.
That's with our Rachel. We were at a national meeting. We all have the T-shirts on, the Huntington's Disease Society.
And Rachel is your second daughter.
She is the third daughter.
Third daughter.
Third daughter. The second one with Huntington's. Our older daughter lives here in Jackson. Leanne Kreiderman is her name, but she doesn't have Huntington's.
So 3 daughters. 2 were adopted. 1 actually is the mother of the other.
That's
right.
correct.
Yeah.
Our second one, Cynthia, is the mother of Rachel. Rachel is now 28, and she lives in an adult foster care home, a very good home here in Jackson. In fact, that's why we moved to Jackson, because her biological mother, Cynthia, was in a home here. Wayne County had placed her here, thinking it was the best home available, and so we moved here eventually to be close to her. She died after we had moved here at age 42. The mother of Cynthia, of Rachel, died. So.
Are both of the daughters, did they have the early onset Huntington's?
Yes. Which is unusual, only 10%
Yeah, this
of
is Cynthia.
Huntington's.
This is
Yes, this is the
Rachel's
one.
biological mother and
Yeah.
our second adopted daughter.
And eventually they cannot talk very legibly, and they can't talk at all at the end.
So Cynthia, who we just saw, she gave birth
To
Rachel.
Rachel.
to
Yes.
Rachel.
And
We
we
had-
adopted Rachel at birth.
Wow.
Out of the
Cynthia was
hospital.
already at that point unable to care for her.
Right. So this is a picture of Cynthia. That was Cynthia in her home with the rest of us. With Rachel is the one with the red shirt. So it's been a few years. The social worker's on the left. But there we are. Our
And
oldest daughter's Leanne there on the right.
Well, that must have been all-consuming. Just
It was, yes. Oh my,
how
there
did
we
you
are.
work? How did you? I mean, it was because you cared for her in your own home,
Yes.
right?
Well, Elton continued working, so I had mostly the burden of it.
Now, there's our family way back
Before
when my beard was black.
the four of us, years ago. Yeah, so it's been
So
a
we
while.
have the teenage Cynthia and Leanne, and then of course Laquita and me. So that was before we had any symptoms of.
And the early symptoms of Huntington's, they resemble, and particularly in the teenage years, of some teen just, you know,
The
lashing
behavioral
out.
problems,
You
that's
know,
right. You don't know whether it's the disease or just normal teenage angst.
Right.
just having a
right.
rough teenage go of it, but much
Right.
worse. It became much worse as time went on.
The body, the body's affected with involuntary movements. It used to be called Huntington's chorea, and because of the dance-like movements that they have, Rachel's movements are quite severe now.
And you had so many years of experience
Yes.
that making the decision a second time,
Right.
you were so more well informed as to what
Yes.
life was like raising someone with
Right.
Huntington's.
Yeah, we knew what we were getting into.
Now there's a very recent, couple of weeks ago, Rachel. She loved
We spent
being out in the water.
some time over on Lake Michigan. Some friends came out and provided this little surfing kind of device. Spent several hours with her out there.
And how is she doing now?
On the whole, she's doing well and happy in her home, but she does fall a lot, and so that's of concern because wheelchairs in the future for her. So
Your faith plays quite a bit in
very
the
important.
story in the book you've
Yes,
written,
yes.
but also in how you were informed of the caring of your daughters.
Yes, the motivation was this is something God has called us to, and if He has called us to it, then He's going to give us the resources to deal with it, and He
Yes.
has. He's been faithful.
And that helped a lot afterwards when we were really in the midst of it all. It's a hard job being a caregiver, and especially if there are also behavior problems. Oh, it's very difficult. And so it helped to think there's purpose here, that we were called to do this, and there's a reason for it. And so that was important to us.
Your daughter that's blessed with good health, is she adopted as well?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
How did she feel about bringing in to the family someone that was going to require so much care?
Well, she was pretty young when we adopted the second one. And of course, Cynthia, the second one, did not show symptoms until she was diagnosed at age 25. She had a lot of problems as a teen, but we thought she was just a teenager. But
Leanne has really shouldered the burden with us,
yes,
and is very supportive.
she's been a great help. Yeah.
How close are they in age to each other?
Oh, she was 18 months older, I believe it was.
Cynthia and Rachel.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Cynthia and Leanne.
and Leanne, the first two. So they were very near in age. So, but there's a big gap now between Leanne, the oldest one, and Rachel, who's 28. So, but they're sisters. So.
Well, it's like, well, it's grandparents raising grandkids
Mhm.
as well. It's
That's
really
right.
what you're doing.
And of course, she was a grandchild, but since we adopted her at birth, she always called us mother and father. So.
You wrote the book for other people.
Yes.
Who?
We wanted, first of all, other people who had experienced the problems of being caregivers to Huntington's patients. But you'll notice the subtitle of the book makes it relevant to other caregivers as well. Anybody who is caregiver for a person who has a terminal disease has to deal with much the same problems.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted
Yeah.
them both to have encouragement emotionally and otherwise, but we wanted them to have information about resources that were available in the social services system.
And also, we made so many mistakes with Cynthia, the first one, and we did feel like we learned something though from that. And so when we had realized that Rachel had it too, which was very dispiriting, it was hard to accept that. But we knew that we could do a better job because we'd been through it once before. And we did do a better job, and so we felt that our experience would help others because we had such little help with the first go-around. There wasn't that much help, but there is now.
Well, there was no book, no internet. You didn't have...
No internet then.
And unfortunately, the disease, there's been no progression in the science of this disease.
There's been a lot of research, and a lot of research is still going on, so at least that is encouraging. And Huntington's is different from, say, Alzheimer's, in that we know specifically the gene that triggers the development of HD disease. So the research can be more focused than in other cases.
Yeah, the Huntington's has been described as being like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Lou Gehrig disease all together at the same time, and there are a lot of similarities there. The gene, though, has been found for Huntington's. It was almost 30 years ago that it was found, and so that's very promising. There's a lot of good research just because they do know the gene that causes it. We all have the gene, but thankfully we don't have the mutated gene as some families do.
Well, it's a fascinating book. I've read parts of it. I'm anxious to read the rest, and everyone can read it because it's available everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Amazon has it listed, yes.
Well, thanks for coming in today.
Well, thank you for
the
having us.
opportunity.
Yes, we wrote that so maybe it would help somebody else who's dealing with being a caregiver.
I'm sure there's someone watching right now that is going to be helped by your story.
It's a hard job. It can be really, really
I don't know how you did it, but it's an amazing story. Shattered Dreams But Hope, thanks to the authors, Dr. Laquita Higgs and Dr. Elton Higgs.